Hello and welcome to the Hindu editorial discussion. Today's discussion is on the Hindu newspaper that is of November 9th, and my name is Ryan Pinto, who is going to present to you this discussion. What are the topics for discussion that we have today? So we have India US relationship, which is going to be part of international relation. India and US election commission comparison. So we are going to compare India's and United States election commissions, which is again part of governance and polity. We are going to see ecology versus economics, part of environment ecology, and India and Maldives relation. So let's continue with the topics. For India and US relationship, why are we discussing this today? Context is we have Joe Biden, who has become the president elect. In the month of January, he is going to be sworn in as the next president of United States. How is it going to affect India and United States relationship? India and Biden. United States policy may see more consistency without dependence on personalized summits. So, what are the changes that is going to happen? So, you must remember we are going to see more of consistency. We'll be seeing more consistency. As we had seen Trump, he was much more unpredictable and he used to take a decision on a knee jerk basis. But we will see more consistency. New Delhi is preparing now to work with the new US administration. The win is a mixed bag for the government. There are some positives and the negatives, which we are going to discuss. Mr. Narendra Modi invested considerably in the Trump administration. That is, so we are going to see the negative points. What were the negative points first? Mr. Narendra Modi has invested considerably in the Trump administration, which included the Houston and Ahmedabad rallies with Mr. Trump. So recently we had seen just before the lockdown, we had the Ahmedabad rallies that indicated a virtual endorsement for his re-election. So we were completely behind Trump. The External Affairs Minister snubbed to the Democrat led House Foreign Affairs Committee and the invitation to see senior Trump officials for 2+2 talks just before the US election also played into the impression of New Delhi accepting a Trump victory. So, three things you must remember, that is the rallies which happened in Houston and Ahmedabad. Second is the snub given to the Democrat led House Foreign Affairs Committee. And the third is 2+2 talks. So, all these shows we were completely behind Trump, but Biden won the elections. Mr. Biden, a long time supporter of US India relationship. So, on the other side, the positive thing is Mr. Biden is a long time supporter of US India relationship. He was the vice president when Obama was the president. So, he's always a votary of the US India relationship. We have to remember this to heal rifts in its policy and restore the soul of America. So, when Joe Biden has come, he has taken the pledge to heal rifts in its policy and restore the soul of America. So, America was fighting on many fronts. America had made many enemies. So, Joe Biden's aim is to heal rifts in its policy and restore the soul of America as a leader. However, it is clear that he will make moves to reverse some of the Trump era policies. We can't expect a lot of change, but some changes can be expected. So, this is from the new administration, we must understand. What is the impact on India? For India, these could include the US's in return to the Paris Climate Summit. So, US had under Donald Trump gone out of the Paris Climate Summit. So, what can India expect? United States will come back. So, that's a good sign, which would help with its energy transformation. So, when it comes back, it will also help the others. It itself, the United States itself, also will take many major changes so that it helps in the renewable energy, and help to curb down the global climate change. And a return to nuclear negotiation, which will facilitate its regional connectivity ambitions. So it will sign the Paris Climate uh, Accord again, return to Iran nuclear negotiations. So these are the positives we can see. Iran was completely sidelined and a lot of confrontation happening. So it will return to Iran nuclear negotiations. He is unlikely to reverse the Afghan pullout. Yes, one place where the Donald Trump decision will be continued which is the Afghan pullout. The troops will be taken out from Afghanistan and might make it more measured exit. On China, less confrontational attitude. So you must remember with various countries what it is going to be in case of Paris Climate Summit, in case of China. So just remember these points, very important. Iran, with China, what is the situation going to be? On human rights is going to be a very tricky situation for India. Issues on human rights, Jammu and Kashmir, and Citizenship Amendment Act. So this is what the pundits say that, or the experts say that in this case there will be some um, negative with India. But on the whole, India is going to have good relationship with United States. This is what the experts say. Mr. Biden's presidency promises a change in leadership with broad powers to advisors and process driven decisions. It will be more consistent, it will be more predictable. Advisors will take the decision, not like the earlier dispensation under Trump. His belief in building up United States traditional transatlantic and trans-Pacific alliances. So these two again are very important. Transatlantic and trans-Pacific alliance is also going to be very, very important. So not much of confrontation, more of leadership. So the conclusion is no sudden moves such as Mr. Trump's withdrawal of India's preferences, which was given, general system of preferences was given for India, so that we could increase our exports. But this was removed by Donald Trump. So this was sudden move, which was expected, but this is now not expected from Joe Biden. And policy consistency is likely to be preferred. Above all, as New Delhi prepares to adjust its responses to the new dispensation, it would welcome Mr. Biden's stated intention to re energize the multilateral global order and to restore the United States' position in leading not by example of its power, but by the power of example. So it's a very important statement. So it will not try to lead by showing its power, but it will lead by example. So some important points we saw, how what are the positives and what are the negatives of Joe Biden coming. What is it for India except in the human rights and Jammu Kashmir and CAA? Rest all the other things will be fine. It will be more consistent and predictable. So the next article that we are going to see is Election Commission of India and United States. So we are going to see the comparison. Recently, we had the elections happening in United States as well as in states like Bihar and Madhya Pradesh and bypolls happening. We have seen a lot of consistency, a lot of trust, a lot of power in the Indian Election Commission, and not the same in the American Federal Election Commission, where the candidates have moved not to the election commission but to the courts in America to solve the issue. So we are going to see that something on the election commissions in both the countries, turning the spotlight on America's election custodian. In its functioning, so you must remember, in its functioning, the United States federal election has much more narrower mandate. So remember, narrower mandate than Indian equivalent. Premature announcements claiming victory as well as increasing legal meandering. So a lot of problems in the American election commission, which is called as a federal election commission. It has a narrower mandate. Premature announcements were made, lot of legal here and there. There has not been even a single order or intervention passed by the American counterpart of the Election Commission of India, the Federal Election Commission of the United States of America. So you are not, if you have noticed, if sir, there are a lot of issues which is there happening in the elections in India, you will notice a lot of intervention by the Election Commission. They might stop the, if there is a rigging and all going on, they might stop. If there is breach of model code of conduct, then warnings are given, though not very powerful, but it has its own say during election, which is not seen in the American counterpart, the election commission of the Federal Election Commission. So just remember this. In India, our constitutional fathers had debated in the Constituent Assembly itself of the necessity of imbuing in election commission of India with enormous power, of course, to be exercised during the course of election and strictly on other election related matter. So why is our election commission considered to be so good? It is because of the founding fathers, which has given a lot of powers. Though we are saying, though we criticize that the election commission in India does not have a lot of power, but we compare it with the current elections in America, we see it is doing the job well. In case of elections and election related matter, Article 324, we have to remember, Article 324 talks about election commission, gives a lot of power. By virtue of being custodian of electoral roll, all matters related to keeping the roll updated fall under the ECI's domain. So we are going to see later in the functions, what are the functions of the election commission: to make the rolls, to conduct free, fair, just elections, to look as a quasi-judicial body in case of disputes. So a lot of things are there. Thus the question arises, why is the Federal Commission, Election Commission of the United States almost invisible? So you must understand how important or beautiful our constitution is. The Federal Election Commission has a much narrower mandate than its Indian equivalent, as we had seen earlier. The Federal Election Commission was established comparatively recently. It opened its door in 1975 with special mandate to regulate campaign finance issues. So it was established recently and mostly focusing on financial issues. The Federal Commission is led by 6 commissioners. So in India, we have three commissioners, that is one chief election commission and the two election commissioners. But in United States, we have 6 commissioners. 6 posts of the commissioners are supposed to be equally shared by Democrats and Republicans. So 3 by Democrats and 3 by Republicans. That is how United States work. So mostly the decisions are on the partisan lines, on the party line. So those people who are nominated by Republicans, they will support the Republicans, while there's the others, the they'll be supporting the Democrats. The president has not mentioned even once about appealing to the Federal Election Commission, but only to the US Supreme Court, as I had told earlier. In sharp contrast, our constitution's fathers decided to limit the role of judiciary to the post-election period. So our constitution is beautiful. Our founding fathers, headed by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and the others, played a great role in the constitution and made the election commission powerful and workable. Widening postal ballots. Another issue in the elections of United States, as well as a concern in India, is the widening postal ballot space. India would do well to take a leaf of the United States system's book when it comes to postal balloting. So in United States, most of the elections were through the postal ballots. We need to learn from them. In 2016 US elections, almost quarter of the votes were counted from postal and early balloting. In India, we have confined postal ballots to only few categories. In India, postal ballots are allowed only for government staff as well as the police or armed forces. Need to add more foolproof system. Yes, we have constraints of procedures, we have constraints of resources. For example, postal ballots to the Indian Army have at present to be sent to the central post or two, that is 56 APO. So there it has to be sent, but before they can reach the destination where our Jawans are stationed or returned to be counted, the small window of actual polling period gets over. So we have a problem of procedure. It has a lengthy procedure and a lot of issues which are present, and only postal ballot allowed for police or armed forces. So the conclusion is opposition parties protest for weeks and months by sitting on dharna, often blocking whole avenues. Elsewhere, the writer of the editorial, Naveen Chawla. So just to let you know, he was the former chief election commissioner, Naveen Chawla, a very famous personality. And he says elsewhere he has heard the beating of utensils by those who are disgruntled for up to half an hour in the evenings. And now the world is watching the turbulences in the United States. So what he points out is India is much more, Indian election commissions and Indian elections are much more uh, trustable and much more better than the others. In sharp contrast, ever since I first election in 1951-52 and every single election since, our political parties, losers and winners alike, have invariably accepted the results declared by the Election Commission of India, with the result that the baton has passed on a graceful and smooth manner. This is the beauty of our election commission, and this is a part of the GS paper 2 elections. The next topic is investments in India. It is on more on economics and investments, and currently we have lack of investments happening, which is leading to less employment and the companies closing down and hurting of the economy, which is decelerating. Let's see the investments situation. What can we do to increase the investments? The other day we had seen, to improve the economy, focus needs to be on opening up the economy and giving more skills to the laborers, etc. So we had seen that. Today we are going to focus on how can more investment come in. India must ensure regulatory certainty. We can't have sudden changes and sudden, questions and sudden answers and suddenly things changing. We can't do that. So India must ensure regulatory certainty while seeking to woo global investors. Global investors look at economies which are stable, which are predictable. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent address at virtual global investor roundtable. So recently there was a global investor roundtable where he stressed that the Indian country or the country offered benefits to a lot of people, a lot of investors, and the country will give returns with reliability, demand with democracy, stability with sustainability, and growth with a green approach. So, very nicely put it, like reliability, returns with reliability, demand with democracy, stability with sustainability, and growth with green approach. Growth with green approach, there is this next article which we are going to see, a very nice article by Jairam Ramesh on environment ecology. So it talks about growth with green approach. Dollar 1.5 trillion. So Narendra Modi also brought in the dollar 1.5 trillion national infrastructure pipeline and other public works projects which we have to woo the investors. We need more investments, and this is what we are offering. As the RBI noted in its latest monetary policy report last month, investment already in contraction mode in July September quarter 2019 suffered a massive pandemic shock. So already the investments were low after the pandemic. It has always more. It has gone down and declined. So we need more of investments coming up. Fixed investment, which almost halved in the first quarter of the current fiscal, continues to face an uncertain outlook given the weak consumption demand and excess capacity in most countries. So fixed investments is reducing because of the demand which is less. So when the demand is less, the profits are not more, and production is not there. And why will the companies invest? Due to one, cram businesses' ability to borrow has reduced. Secondly, government's ability to apportion more funds for growth. So the private sector also and the public sector both are doing bad. Both are not able to invest. So the you must remember we need more investment. Mr. Modi cited a 13% increase in FDI. So you have to just remember. So regulatory certainty is needed, and uh, the investors are the investors are hoping for better policies, better regulations, and stability in it. Mr. Modi, Prime Minister Modi, cited a 13% increase in FDI flows in the first 5 months. So that was a good thing. But out of the $27 billion which was received, three-fourths went to a single large telecom company, that is Geo. Mr. Modi is surely only too well aware that what investors crave most is regulatory certainty. So, again, this point comes out on regulatory certainty. So, that is why Narendra Modi has to do, the Prime Minister has to do, walk the talk. Prime Minister needs to ensure that his assurance of stability is buttressed by action that dispel investors' concern over flip flops. Tax claim against Vodafone. So where are the problems? Why there is some skepticism? Okay, it is because of the cases like the Vodafone, where we have gone behind Vodafone for asking taxes. Arbitration laws. Mr. Modi has his task cut out. Make sure that the investors see him walk the talk. So two main things is arbitration laws and tax claims, or attacking or going behind the investors. So that is what you have to understand. So we have seen another way of focusing on on the economy. So last time we had seen, when we were talking about the economy, how to revive it, we saw is it's by freeing up the economy and skilling up the economy. Today we spoke about the regulatory certainty. So another important article which we are going to see now is economy versus ecology. This article is written by Jairam Ramesh. So there is always a debate between what we need to focus on: economy to serve our poor, or ecology which actually supports the economy. So there is always a debate in this. COVID 19, climate and carbon neutrality. In the post COVID 19 world, we should focus or make our efforts to ensure that G in GDP is not gross but green. Okay, so GDP means gross domestic product, but the writer is Jairam Ramesh. He is the former minister during the UPA government. He says put green rather than gross in the GDP. Even Narendra Modi also, we had just seen in the investors meet, has said growth with greenery. Okay, that's focusing on environment. History is divided into two periods: before Common Era, that is BCE, and Common Era, that is CE. But after the COVID 19, it will be before COVID 19 and after COVID 19. Ecological disequilibrium. More fundamentally, the pandemic reflects fundamental ecological disequilibrium. So, if you see the pandemic's effect on the economics, it's been very bad. India in the first quarter was minus 23.9% GDP, unemployment at its highest, migration of the laborers, etc., etc. A lot of things happened. Now, what was the main reason? One of the major reason to amplify this COVID 19, or the reason for this COVID 19, was our focus not on ecology but only on economics. Evidence has accumulated loss of biodiversity and ever increasing human incursions into natural world have contributed heavily to the outbreak and spread of epidemic diseases. So, because of human incursions in the natural world, all this is happening. We don't not only have COVID 19, there are other diseases also, one viruses like the Ebola viruses. Then we have the Japanese encephalitis happening. and many other you have many other things happening. So this is because our focus is more on economics. 3 E is very important: evolution, ecology, and environment. Far greater attention to the biosciences and agriculture, health, and environment are going to profoundly impacted by the current pandemic. So agriculture, health, and environment is going to get affected by the pandemic. Public health science and environmental science are two sides of the same coin. So when we talk about the public health science, it means we are talking about public health, but also environmental science is very important. We always follow the grow now, pay later model, which is unsustainable. Grow now, pay later is not sustainable. You must remember, if we are focusing on economics today, we will have to pay today itself. It's not going to affect our future generation. That is why sustainable growth is a concept which has now come up. Sustainable growth means what? Growth keeping in mind the future problems. We live in a world where climate change is a reality. A recent report of the Ministry of Earth Sciences, very important report, remember, assessment of climate change over Indian region. So just remember this assessment of climate change on the Indian region. It's a very important report, is an excellent up-to-date analysis that deserves wider debate and discussion. Need for making our future science and technology strategy in different areas anchored in an understanding of the impacts of climate change caused by continued emission of greenhouse gases. So there is a need for making our science and technology more sensitive, more adaptable, and more sensible, keeping in mind the climate change. For what may be the solution at one point of time becomes a problem at another. Since we are not thinking about all this, we are just thinking about the short term, we are not thinking about the future, it affects us. Just to give you an example, when we were talking about the CFCs, which was destroying the ozone layer, we took an alternative called as HFCs, hydrofluorocarbon, which would not affect the ozone. But did we take into consideration about its impact on climate change? It was not affecting ozone layer, but it was affecting the global warming. And its global warming potential was found to be more than carbon dioxide. But since we did not take all this into consideration, we were only taking into matter about the money and how expensive it will be, how expensive the air conditions will get. We didn't take into consideration. Now it is affecting us. So this is what happens when you do not take into consideration the climate change, and then we feel if you we need to focus on growing now and then we can pay later. That's not how it's going to be anymore. Commitment across the world. Now the people are realizing, countries are realizing. In September 2008, American state of California, which is the world's fifth largest economy in itself, was the first to commit itself to carbon neutrality. We are going to see what is carbon neutrality. European Union followed with California's example. In 2015 mind, it will bring carbon neutrality. That is what European Union said. China said we are going to bring carbon neutrality by 2060. Japan and South Korea announced by 2050 we are going to bring carbon neutrality like European Union. India too has to begin thinking very seriously. Though we have less per capita emissions, but we contribute to the emissions in the world. At the Paris Climate Change Conference, December 2015, we committed 40% of our electricity generating capacity from non-fossil fuels by the year 2030. So just remember this number, 40% will be non fossil fuel electricity by 2030. That's India's commitment. Now, what do you mean by carbon neutrality? So, when we talk about carbon neutrality, it means emissions are equal to the absorptions of the carbon sinks. So, how much the nature can take and how much we produce, that's almost equal. At Paris in December 2015, India made a commitment on carbon sequestration through forest. It will involve massive scientific intervention, technological innovation, especially when it comes to removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. So we will need to have a lot of inventions and a lot of technological innovation. Nuclear energy is another way we can do, but there are a lot of safety issues, disaster issues in nuclear energy. There is simply no silver bullet waiting for human ingenuity to harness. Every solution being put forward these days, the most recent of which is what we are referring to as geoengineering, is riddled with complications. So there will be complications when we talk about new ways of stopping the climate change or global warming. Renewables are an integral part of the solution we seek, but they have to be seen as more than just devices. They open up avenues for re-architecturing systems as a whole. So renewable energy is way to go. So we saw how economics should be seen, keeping ecology in mind, and the various countries what they're doing and what India is planning to do. Post COVID 19, a radical departure from the past to make economic growth sustainable. GDP growth must, without doubt, revive and get back to 7 to 8%. However, we should make efforts to ensure that G in GDP is not gross but green. India can and should show to the world how measurement of economic growth can take place while taking into account both ecological pluses and minuses. So, this is the conclusion. And the last topic is India Maldives relationship. Now we have Ibrahim Soli, who's the president of Maldives, and we have India, the prime minister. So what is the context? The visit of Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla to the Maldives is significant. Despite the India out protest, New Delhi can take respite in the Soli government's India First policy. So there are protests going on in Maldives, which is by the opposition leaders, where they are saying India out. It is for their political reasons. But Soli government, Ibrahim Soli, who's the current president, his policy is India first. Maldivian President Ibrahim Soli, bilateral cooperation, especially in the economic front, has become a model that New Delhi can adopt to make Prime Minister Modi's neighborhood first a success. So Soli talks about India first, we are talking about neighborhood first. India and Maldives have had bilateral relation for centuries. Where is our relation good? First is technology. Second is Maldivian students come to Indian educational institutes. Patients are coming to avail the medical, or you can say health tourism. We have a liberal visa free regime, tourism. So all these are the positives between India and Maldives. Whereas India helped Maldives in 1988 when armed mercenaries attacked the Maldivian government to throw out President Mamun Abdul Gayoom. India sent its paratroopers and navy vessels under Operation Cactus to help the president. In 2004 tsunami, we helped them. That is, India helped them in the drinking water crisis recently. Decade later were another occasions where India rushed assistance. In the time of COVID-19, India rushed 250 million aid in quick time, also sending medical supplies, cargo ferry, opened an air travel bubble. The first country to do all this in South Asia. It has promised more as and when required. but the opposition over there is using the India card so that they can come to power. Abdullah Yamin was in power when the water crisis had happened. Now Yamin has launched an India out campaign. So that is like a backstab to India against New Delhi's massive developmental funding for creating physical, social, and community infrastructure. An incumbent President Soli's government retaining two India gifted helicopters. So Soli is for India president, and he has retained two India gifted helicopters, and they are operational military personnel. So, some concerns. Maldivian protesters recently converted their demand for early release of Mr. Yamin. So, what was the problem? So, Mr. Yamin is given a 5 years imprisonment in the money laundering case, and the protesters wanted to remove this imprisonment from Mr. Yamin, but now it has turned to stop selling national assets to foreigners, implying India. So same like we had Nepal, where the Nepalese Prime Minister was using the India card for his political benefit. Same is done by Mr. Yamin. Mohammad Nasheed, who was the nation's first president elected under multi party democracy, now the parliament speaker, continues to head the party and had also named Mr. Soli as the president. So, Nasheed is heading the party, he is a speaker, and he had appointed Mr. Soli as the president. Mr. Nasheed's on again, off again call for a changeover to a parliamentary form of government can polarize the already over politicized nation even more. So, Mr. Nasheed is not that stable. Despite this, India can take respite in the strategic comfort of the India first policy of the Soli government. So, Soli government is having the India first policy. We can take the comfort, but we can't take it for granted. So, these are the editorials which we have seen, and I hope you are able to understand. Thank you for listening, and remember, the art and science of asking questions is the source of all knowledge.